The Madden Curse. Is it real? Is it fake? Is it a coincidence? Is it destined to happen every single year? Everybody has an opinion on the Madden Curse, but I'm here to tell you guys why I believe the Madden Curse is real. Imagine you were an NFL player who just had a dominant or a breakout season like Ezekiel Elliott or Antonio Brown, one of the best players at your position, and then EA Sports comes over and says, hey, would you want to be on the Madden cover? That's a dicey little question. It feels like every year the Madden cover athlete is out there getting injured or something happens to their team, or maybe they even retire. But the question is the Madden Curse real, or is it just a giant coincidence? Me personally, I think it's real, but just don't take my word for it. Let's jump into the facts. To truly understand if the Madden cover curse is real or it's a coincidence, you need to go back to the roots of the cover. So let's look at Madden 99, where Garrison Hearst was really kind of the first athlete we saw on the cover. Now, Hearst was only on a select number of covers, so in a lot of people's minds, he doesn't really actually count. But he led the 49ers to the playoffs only a few seasons into the NFL, so he was top of the mind. Sounds great, right? Well, it was going well until he broke his ankle against the Falcons. To make matters worse, he had complications with his surgery that caused a bone in his foot to die. Yeah, I think this dude might have been cursed. Some doctors thought he'd actually never play again in the NFL, and then he missed the next 2 seasons going through rehabilitation from the injury. Yeah, he's definitely cursed. But okay, I get the 99 thing, but what about 2000? Now, this is an interesting situation. Barry Sanders was featured as the cover athlete for John Madden 2000, and shortly after he was announced, Barry said, you know what, I'm going to retire from the NFL, and it shocked the entire sports world. Now, there's a lot of stuff that happened with the Lions and kind of the GM situation, but a top player retiring at their peak is a situation that Lions fans hate to talk about to this day. Now, with Barry Sanders retiring, EA was in a little bit of a predicament, so EA was scrambling to get a replacement for Sanders, and they quickly found a replacement in the up-and-coming Dorsey Levens for the Green Bay Packers. How did it pan out for Dorsey, though? The season after being on the cover wound up being his last as a starter, and the Packers posted a horrible record, and Levens was ultimately released in 2001 by the Green Bay Packers, so you can say that both of these guys definitely cursed. If we move on to 2001, this is where you're going to find Eddie George. Most people consider Eddie George the first real cover athlete in Madden cover history. John Madden typically appeared in the top right-hand corner of the cover, but Eddie actually took the prime real estate of the entire cover. Now, how did Eddie do after getting the cover, though? He carried a talented Titans team into the playoffs, but an unfortunate bobble pass, which was pretty rare for him, in the 4th quarter of a playoff game against the Ravens led to a pick 6 that kind of devastated the Titans. Eddie played a few more years in the NFL, but was never really the same, but to me, chalk this one up partially to the curse and a little bit up to old age. I think Eddie was what I'm going to call kinda cursed. Dante Culpepper in Madden 2002 was a big body quarterback that had a cannon for an arm. After being named the cover athlete, Dante suffered a horrific knee injury against the Pittsburgh Steelers and missed the remainder of the season. Now, it wasn't all bad for Dante. He had 2 elite seasons after a down year and returning from the injury, but he became a backup quarterback around 2005 and never really recaptured the magic early that he had in his career, so chalk this one up to the curse. In Madden 2003, we saw Marshall Faulk, one of the best running backs of all time. Now, Faulk is considered by a lot of people as one of the most versatile running backs that we've ever seen, and he dominated both the running game and the receiving game in his career. The season that Faulk earned the cover nod, though, he rushed for under 1,000 yards for the first time in his career. Faulk declined pretty quickly after this, missed all of 2006 after having the surgery on his knee, but he never actually returned to the league. Marshall Faulk, in my opinion, cursed. When you look at Madden 2004, you see Michael Vick on the cover, and he is one of the most dominant athletes in sports video game history. Now, if you have Michael Vick on your team in Ultimate Team mode in today's world, you probably love him, but if you're playing against him, you probably hate him and you're screaming at the top of your lungs to figure out how to try to stop him. Now, Vick is one of the most famous cursed athletes in Madden cover history because this dude was in the prime of his career, fractured his fibula during a preseason game that was pretty gruesome, and then Vick missed the first 11 games of the regular season after that. And as you all know, Vick went to have some off-season troubles, ended up getting suspended from the league, eventually came back, but was never the quarterback that we saw back in his early days. Moving on to Madden 2005, we see Ray Lewis. Now, Ray Lewis still had a great season after being named the cover athlete, but he didn't record a single interception in that season, which for Ray Lewis is pretty strange. The season after being on the cover, however, Ray Lewis tore his hamstring and missed the rest of the season. But still, even with that and a couple injuries later on, Ray went down as one of the greatest linebackers of all time, so I'm going to say for Ray Lewis that he actually evaded the curse. Madden 2006 brought us new consoles as the Xbox 360 was dropping at this point, and Donovan McNabb donned Madden 2006. At this stage of his career, Donovan McNabb had solidified himself as a top-tier quarterback in the NFL. Most people anticipated the year he was on the cover as being a monster year for McNabb, but a groin injury had kind of other plans for Donovan and took him out for the remainder of the season. The season after that, he tore his ACL late in the year and missed the rest of the season after that. While McNabb showed some flashes here and there, he never quite recovered and was the dominant quarterback that we saw early on for him. McNabb was cursed. In Madden 2007, we saw Shaun Alexander, who had been tearing up the NFL at this point. Coming into the 2006 season, Shaun Alexander was dominating the NFL. He was a touchdown machine, and he was the guy that you wanted on your fantasy draft team. Unfortunately for him, he broke his foot in week 3, and as you can imagine, Alexander didn't reach 1,000 yards that year for the first time since starting for the Seahawks. In 2007, tons of injuries. 2008, yeah, the Seahawks actually kind of cut him from the roster. Definitely cursed. Madden 2008 brought Vince Young to the cover. Now, rumor has it that Vince Young wasn't actually the original guy chosen for the cover in Madden 2008. LaDainian Tomlinson was heavily favored, but funny enough, a large group of Chargers fans actually campaigned to keep him off the cover due to the curse. So people at this point knew that the curse was actually real, and they were scared of it. Tomlinson reportedly declined EA's offer to be on the cover, and EA chose Vince Young and Luis Castillo for the Spanish version, but more on him later. Young addressed the cover curse on TV, dismissing it, but then had a slow start to his 2007 season before he injured his quadricep. He came back later in the season but injured himself in the final game of the year. Kerry Collins then became the starter, and Vince Young became the backup after injuring his knee in the first game of the 2008 season. Oh, and Luis Castillo, well, he suffered a knee injury in 2007 and only played in 10 games. So to me, both of those guys, cursed. Madden 2009 brought us Brett Favre. And remember that one time Brett Favre retired? No, not that time. The other time. No, the other time. Okay, so EA chose Favre as a cover athlete after he retired, but then something interesting happened, as you guys know. Shortly after getting the cover athlete spot, Favre announced that he was coming back to the NFL and signed with the New York Jets after a little bit of drama. He performed decently well in the field, but had quite a few off-the-field issues. Later in the season, though, he suffered a right shoulder injury that he can never really shake in his remaining years in the NFL. He was kind of old, but to me, I'm going to label Brett Favre as cursed. Now, Madden 2010 brought us something a little bit different. We saw 2 players on the cover, so you have a chance for 2 crazy curses, or one guy maybe being cursed and one guy not being cursed. So we see Troy Polamalu and Larry Fitzgerald don the cover. 2 athletes couldn't possibly yield 2 curses, right? Well, that's actually pretty much correct. Larry Fitzgerald had a stellar year on the field in 2009 and still played well when Kurt Warner left and retired in 2010. The only thing that you could really point out with him was he has a small rib injury that kept him out of the Pro Bowl in 2010, but I think had it been a playoff game or something, he would have been able to play. Now, Polamalu, well, a little bit different for him, and I think that he received pretty much all the bad luck. He sprained his MCL, he missed 4 games, and then he injured his PCL a few games later once he came back as the Steelers missed the playoffs. So I'm going to say Polamalu cursed, Larry Fitzgerald, not so much. For Madden 2011, we saw Drew Brees. Now, Brees wasn't actually terrible in 2010, but it was one of the worst seasons up to that point in his career. Doubled the interceptions, and he lost in the first week of the playoffs, which is never a good thing if you're trying to go far. What made things worse was that the team that New Orleans lost to was the only team to make the playoffs in NFL history with a losing record. Yup, if you remember correctly, that's the Seattle Seahawks. So Drew Brees, we're going to go with cursed. Madden 2012 brought the most unlikely cover athlete that we have ever seen in Madden history, and that was Peyton Hillis for the Cleveland Browns. Yes, the Cleveland Browns had a cover athlete. After a breakout year in 2010, Hillis found himself in a bit of limbo. He had a fairly public contract battle with the Cleveland Browns, ended up having strep throat, and then an injured hamstring that led him to missing games and failing to get consistent production. His teammates kind of resented him, management kind of resented him, and he ran for just under 600 yards that season. And then the Browns said, you know what, we're going to decline to re-sign you, and he went off to play for a couple other teams, but was never nearly the player that he was before he ended up getting on the cover. Peyton Hillis, definitely cursed. Madden NFL 13 saw Calvin Johnson get on the cover, and for cover athletes, Calvin Johnson, in my opinion, had one of the best chances to avoid being cursed. He was dominating the NFL and continued to do so for 2012 as he broke numerous receiving records, including the most receiving yards in a season. While he dominated the NFL in 2012, the Lions still went 4-12 and finished in last place in their division, so I'm gonna say Calvin Johnson, only kind of cursed. Madden 25 was a big year for EA, and it kind of threw a lot of people off as they were expecting it to be Madden 14, but they said, you know what, we're going with Madden 25 to celebrate the anniversary of Madden. Now, Adrian Peterson was your cover athlete, and his first carry of the 2013 season was an electric 78-yard touchdown. After that, a foot injury bothered him for the majority of the season, and he ultimately shut it down in December due to the injury. He finished with 1,200 yards rushing, but the Vikings finished the year 5-10-1, and then after that, he was actually suspended for an off-the-field incident in 2014 for that season. So Adrian Peterson, we're going to say definitely cursed. Madden 15 brought us one of the most outspoken cover athletes at that point, and that was Richard Sherman. Now, Sherman balled out for the season, he was selected for the cover. Even more crazy, the Seahawks made it all the way to the Super Bowl. Unfortunately, though, they elected to pass the ball instead of giving it to Marshawn Lynch on the 1-yard line, and well, as you know it, we all know how that one ended. The Patriots picked it off and then ended up up winning the Super Bowl. Richard Sherman suffered an injury that needed surgery, but he elected to heal naturally and was back at the start of the following season. Now, Sherman is still an elite cornerback in the game, so we'll chalk his bad luck as a coincidence and not part of the actual curse, so Richard Sherman, not cursed. Piggybacking on kind of the electric energy of Richard Sherman, Madden 16 brought us Odell Beckham Jr., who is a guy that is never short for words. The only issue we really saw Odell suffer in the season where he won the cover was, well, his anger issues. Beckham Jr. and Josh Norman had their fair share of hilarious, in my opinion, clashes, but Odell had 13 touchdowns and a ton of receiving yards. Since then, he's only continued to dominate both on the field and with endorsements, so in my opinion, he's one of the rare occurrences we've seen that has not been cursed at all. And if you thought for some reason that, okay, we had two guys that weren't cursed, maybe Gronk can actually break the curse again here in Madden 17, well, you pretty much thought wrong. After playing in 15 games each of the past 2 seasons leading up to his Madden 17 cover announcement, the Madden Curse definitely struck Gronk. He only played in 8 games, starting 6 of those, and ultimately finding himself on the bench for the entirety of the season. Even with all of that, Gronkowski still earned himself another Super Bowl ring with the Patriots, so I mean, he did still kind of win, but I think Gronk was cursed. With all that information now, do you guys think the cover curse is real, or is it still a coincidence? Me personally, I'm still convinced that it's actually a real thing. And with that being said, who do you guys think will be on the cover of Madden NFL 18? There's a lot of different options out there. My personal pick is Antonio Brown, but I kind of hope he doesn't get on there because I don't want my favorite player on my favorite team actually getting hurt. If you guys enjoyed this type of video and you want to see more, make sure you guys hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe. Check the playlist on the screen, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.